So Sergio Perez has a Red Bull contract until the end of 2024, so everything should be fine, right? Yeah, except unfortunately that isn't the case. After scoring just 5 points in the last 3 races, Lewis Hamilton is now breathing down Checo's neck, and this is leaving him in serious risk of him losing second place in the Drivers' Championship, as well as his drive at Red Bull. With his home Grand Prix on the horizon, there have been numerous rumours about Checo being benched, replaced, fired, and even him retiring before that happens. So will Red Bull give him one final shot in 2024, or is it time for Checo just to hang it up completely and try some different things? Just before we crack on, please subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with any new content. When you consider how Checo's been performing so far this season in the RB19, which in Max's hands is completely all-conquering, there is basis to these kind of rumours and stories that are coming up, and they're kind of believable, to be honest. Some appear to be coming out of Red Bull, some are just coming out of the press in general, but really none of them seem too far-fetched. There have been rumours about Perez announcing his retirement at his home Grand Prix, the Mexican Grand Prix, and to be honest, if he was going to do it somewhere, that would kind of be the perfect place to do it. And there have also been murmurs about Checo losing his drive at Red Bull if he doesn't secure second place in the Drivers' Championship, and with Lewis Hamilton closely following up behind now, he could potentially happen. He's nearly there. But then again, with the stuff about him just being fired outright, that would mean that Red Bull would surely lose second place in the Drivers' Championship anyway. So kind of those stories make no sense. So they may as well just try and keep him on now and do their best to keep second place in the championship, right? If they fired Checo right now, that would be handing second place to Hamilton on a platter, surely. But yeah, where would F1 be without rumours and speculation? But whilst Verstappen has been cleaning up in his RB19 and wrapping up both championships well ahead of time, Perez has had a very difficult season considering the machinery underneath him. At the start of the year, we were all looking forward to this potential inter-team battle for the championship at Red Bull, with some really fighting words coming out of Perez at the time. But then at Monaco, round 6 of the championship, it all fell apart for one reason or another. Perhaps his notions of challenging Max for the world title weren't taken that well at Red Bull, and he had to be quickly reminded of his job description there. But clearly some words were said, it affected Checo badly, the media pounced on him, and here we are now trying to speculate what's going to happen next year. Now the thing is, Perez has a contract in place for 2024, but as we all know in Formula 1, contracts don't mean that much, something that he is very, very well versed on from his time at Racing Point, when he was unceremoniously kicked out to have Vettel replace him for the new Aston Martin project. And it's because of this and the fact that Red Bull effectively have 2 teams to draw from in terms of drivers, they wouldn't necessarily have such a hard time replacing him with the likes of Tsunoda, Ricciardo and Lawson to draw from. And plus a load of other drivers who I'm sure would jump at the opportunity to drive for Red Bull. I mean, if Alonso was offered a seat today, do you think he would say no? But each of the current Red Bull drivers, and I'll lump in the AlphaTauri lot with this as well, they all have their pros and cons, and it's very easy to suggest that any of them would be an improvement over Perez. If Ricciardo, Tsunoda or Lawson took the drive today and turned up to the next Grand Prix, yeah, they might be better off the bat, but who knows how things might be in a year's time after the Red Bull machine chipping away at them and potentially hammering them down and them having to encounter problems within the team that they weren't expecting. For all we know, they could be in absolutely the same situation next year as Perez is now. Now, Ricciardo, I think, would just be happy to be there because of his recent situations, but I think there's a big chance that Tsunoda or Lawson would quickly find themselves in the same category that Gasly and Albon found themselves in a few years ago. A Red Bull drive on the face of it sounds amazing, but it looks like once you kind of get inside, it's a whole different story altogether. Now, throughout the season, we've seen various responses from Perez to the press saying that how his next race is going to be at his best and he's going to be back on form in the next Grand Prix. But these are all very big fighting words coming out of him. But given his form and everything, I don't think it's kind of done him any favours, to be honest. Red Bull have claimed that they will assess Perez and sit down with him and have a chat and get to the bottom of whatever's happening. But I'm not sure that they're doing the most they can. I'm not really sure these words kind of hold water. You know, when you look at him in interviews and you see photos of him, Perez clearly needs to have an arm put around him, but Red Bull, I really am not sure, are the sort of place that will give him that. From the outside anyway, Red Bull seems to have this sort of Wolf of Wall Street's attitude, you know, kill or be killed kind of thing. And for some drivers like Max Verstappen, yeah, this works out great, but Checo Perez, not so much, but that's no problem. It works for some people, it doesn't work for others. And it's a tough situation now between Perez and Red Bull, because it's not as easy as pointing either of them out and saying they're the good guy, they're the bad guy. It's actually kind of quite complicated. On the one hand, Red Bull plucked Perez out of the abyss after having his contract cancelled by Racing Point, and Perez should be kind of eternally grateful and should do whatever he's asked by the team. And also see this as a chance to add some extra years and some extra trophies onto a career that could have very easily been cut short. And surely he should have known what he was getting into and what was expected from him at Red Bull. But on the other hand, Red Bull had just churned through Gasly and Albon, and they desperately needed a driver that was fast, dependable and consistent, and Perez was available and offered them all of these qualities. But the problem is, if a driver shows all these qualities and is available, he's not going to be happy just to pootle around in second place. He's going to want to win races and win championships. So perhaps you could argue that Red Bull kind of got a bit more than they bargained for. Throughout his career, Perez was never a number 2 to anybody. So he saw this drive at Red Bull as a chance to really kind of give him those race wins and that world championship. So he wasn't going to start being a second fiddle to anyone now. So with this whole thing, I think you can point blame at both parties. Neither of them are totally innocent. And I think each had a complete misunderstanding of the other's intentions. But I will say, though, that Red Bull don't appear to have handled this whole thing very well, with Helmut Marko being very unsupportive to the press and everything, Christian Horner not really having some very supportive words, and Perez was apparently given an ultimatum as well. On Red Bull's Instagram page, it's been very Verstappen and Ricciardo heavy, and in the lead up to the Austin Grand Prix, you would think that they'd be putting a bit more weight behind Perez, as he is one of their drivers. This is just not the sort of thing you do to one of your drivers, and I fully understand if Perez and his fans are pissed off by this. By the way, let me know in the comments what your thoughts are about this whole thing, because it's really, really interesting and no one really knows what's going to happen. So with all these threats and ultimatums and hidden messages knocking around right now, who could blame Checo for not being at his best right now and not feeling wanted at the team? Perhaps it was the re-signing of Ricciardo by Red Bull at the start of the season, what was supposed to be a great way to keep Perez on his toes and keep him motivated and driven, has backfired massively. It had the absolute opposite effect, and it was seen by Perez as a clear indication that Red Bull aren't backing him 100%. So is it time for Perez to call it quits at Red Bull? I don't think so myself, but as fans it is frustrating to see one Red Bull blasting off into the distance and the other Red Bull pootling around in 6th, 7th or 8th place. If a single team like Red Bull is dominant, we want to see both of their drivers battling out with each other for the World Championship, because that's the best chance of an entertaining season in this situation. But unfortunately, Red Bull are not in the entertainment business. They are a racing team, and they want to try and win the World Championship as quickly, efficiently and as cheaply as possible. But with the current cost caps, Red Bull probably don't have the budget or the capacity to offer a championship battle between two drivers that we all crave. The cost alone for fielding two drivers in absolutely equal machinery, only for them to potentially split the team, crash into each other, disturb the peace of the team, the cost for that must be enormous. And then everyone vents their frustration at Perez, saying that he isn't worth the Red Bull seat and he's not doing the same as Max. But to be honest, with the truth about the budgeting and all this sort of stuff is that he probably isn't allowed to compete with Max. In fact, that was probably what slumped him off before the Monaco Grand Prix. But in F1, we've always seen drivers who are amazing in a midfield car, but once they get to a car that's able to fight for wins, they're just not quite there. There's just something missing. I mean, look at Fisichella at Renault, or Frentzen at Williams, Alesi at Benetton, or possibly, this could be controversial, I think, but I think it's true, Bottas at Mercedes. He's picked up his wins, he's got his trophies, and I think there's a chance that Perez falls into the same category as those guys. Amazing in midfield machinery, but when they get to the front running ones, not so much. I don't know what causes it, but the thing is, if Perez doesn't turn it round for the remaining races of 2023, there's a real chance he might be in trouble for 2024. Overall, I'm undecided whether Perez should remain at Red Bull for 2024. I mean, contractually, he's obliged to because it's in place. But if he is there and he doesn't sort of fix whatever is bothering him or whatever is in his head, he risks potentially damaging his legacy. And also, if things don't improve, he could also be booted out mid-season in 2024 anyway. You know, perhaps on an ethic and mentality level, Red Bull perhaps just isn't the place for Checo anymore. It was back in 2021 when he started with them, but you know, things move on, times change, people change. You know, he's got a family now and everything, and perhaps what Red Bull are asking for him, he perhaps is just unable to deliver this. So there's only one seat left on the grid for 2024, and whilst his experience and his commercial backing would be fantastic for Williams and could offer a rebirth, it does seem now that James Vowles and co have other plans. And to be honest, I kind of trust Vowles. I think he's pushing that team in the right direction. But surely there must be somebody. I mean, he was a Ferrari junior driver, so perhaps Ferrari could bring him back into the fold and plonk him into Sauber or Haas or someone like that. I mean, where do you think he should go? Let me know in the comments. Or does he even still need to be in Formula 1 at all? But if Checo did decide to hang it up at the end of this year, considering that he is up against one of the F1's best in Max Verstappen, I don't think there'd be any shame in that at all. He's done enough in F1. You know, he has his family, he has his trophies, he has his money, and he might have a life outside of F1 much happier than Max Verstappen's could ever be. We don't know. But anyway, that's F1 rumours for you, and I hope that whatever happens at the end of this, Perez comes out the other end in good shape. So there we go. Thank you so much for watching. Please be sure to like, share and subscribe. I'm Paul, and I'll see you again soon.